Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to the PHNX Mercury podcast. I am your host, Erika Day, and I am joined today by Mr. Stephen Gardner. Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself? How you doing?
I'm just fine. I'm so glad that hump day is over and we're moving on to the latter part of the week. We had a busy weekend as Mercury fans, and we get a little break now until Saturday. So I'm ready to feel refreshed.
Yeah, I'm sure the team probably is enjoying this little break too, especially after the start to the season that they had with the way the schedule was set up. I'm sure we starting to feel a little bit of that too, as far as covering the team and for you going to the games at home consistently. So this little break before the next game on Saturday in Minneapolis is going to be fun.
Right. And before we move on any further, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. And I actually forgot to mention now 2 shows in a row. We are joined today behind the screen by the great Jacob Franklin. And I just want to make sure I give him the proper shout out and love he deserves. He's producing the show late at night with us. And, we have a lot of fun on here, but I just want to make sure Jacob gets those flowers that he deserves. And then also, we've got some new people in the chat today, and I just want to point them out before we go any further. First of all, I see Andy back here. But Michelle, I know you're new here, and I just want to say welcome to the show. Chantel, I saw your first comment here this afternoon that you were busy on Monday watching the Celtics put the Mavs away, and I can't say I blame you for missing the show for that. But we got Andy back here, Mark, even though he always tells me he's not going to come, and of course, the Kobe King is always here. But nonetheless, we've got a big show today. Lots planned and lots to get into, and I'm really, really excited. First of all, before we get into this game that the Mercury played yesterday against the New York Liberty, I want to give the X Factor an extra special shout out. Stephen, I don't know if you could hear it over the television, but this had to have been the most electric environment I have ever been in. And we're only a third of the way through the season. So I just can't imagine when these games mean a little more down the stretch, what this X Factor is going to show out to do for this team. I'm serious. I thought my ears broke at one point.
I mean, I could definitely tell it was getting rowdy at the footprint through the screen. And I think the team also plays not necessarily to the crowd, but they play a style of play that keeps the crowd consistently engaged, just with some of the players they have on the floor, the pace at which they play, and just generally like the connectedness that they're already showing. They're giving the fans a whole lot to cheer about, in addition to the fans not only just wanting to, cheer and be rowdy themselves, but also with the opposing talents that have come through the footprints in their last handful of games. You got the Las Vegas Aces, the Seattle Storm, the New York Liberty. That's a trio of games that not just, fans coming to watch their home crown team, but also the opponents as well. And they've showed up and they've given them an advantage to play off of in each one of those 3 games.
Absolutely. I mean, it seriously was an environment like I don't think I felt it like that in there so far this season, and I know it's just going to get better and better, and I'm really, really excited to see, for example, how they show out against the Fever in just a short week. I mean, we are just in for such a treat with the X Factor, and I just want to give a special shout out to y'all because it really is the best home court advantage in the W, and like you can watch it on TV and know that all day long. It's definitely special.
Yeah, I like I said, keep showing up. This team is giving you a product that is looking to execute on all of the words that they uttered over the offseason, during media day, and pregame and postgame sessions. They said they want to win and they want to win in abundance. Anything less than that is going to feel like a failure in a sense for them, and they can't get to their goal without you all. So keep showing up with your energy and giving them the same thing that they're giving you in terms of their play on the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And that all being said, the Mercury and the Liberty put on a hell of a game for us yesterday. That was some high level stuff. I don't think we've seen such a treat from a Mercury game so far this season. It was a true treat no matter who you were rooting for. There were obviously some times where I felt the whistle was a little much, but at the same time, comparatively to what we saw against the Aces, I have no complaints. That being said, though, the Mercury did pull out the win in this one, 99-93. It was a close game through and through. But this brings me to my very first point that I want to start out with this team. They are 7-0 when they enter halftime with the lead. And I feel like this speaks largely to this team's grit, because especially when you're playing a team like the Liberty that has the ability to make the shots that we saw them make yesterday, no lead is safe in this league. And so it's pretty impressive to take 7 games that you've and win in all of them that you've had the lead at half. I think it speaks to the coaching of this team, the buy-in, and what they believe in exactly what they're supposed to do and their roles. And I think that you can see that in the results in these games.
I think that leads directly to a point we talked about in projecting and looking at the roster on paper before the season started, before training camp really got going. That was that this team just has a compilation of players that have a certain level of care factor that like kind of pings from one another. You see the extra multiple efforts from Brittney Griner, combined with everything that Kahleah is, combined with everything that Natasha Cloud is, combined with everything that Diana Taurasi is. You can keep going down the line, and each of these players are able to spark something, whether it be tangibly on the court or intangibly in their interactions with each other on the floor. And that extends as well to Nate Tibbetts, as well as Christy Tolliver, who's a fiery player when she was in her playing days. Just bringing that same energy from the brain trust on the sideline. Each of these entities just adds up to something that teams have to deal with. Again, like we talked about early in the season, if you don't match it, you're gonna have to deal with it. And even if you do match it, you still have to deal with it because theirs just hits differently because they have so many pieces that bring that energy. Just not solely contingent upon 1 or 2 people. It's quite literally a group of 6 people that bring it on a daily. So that allows for them to compete at a certain level. They're never out of a game. And again, when they're in front of that home crowd and they're able to play off of the energy that they're providing, I mean, what are they, 5-2 at home right now, I believe, or 6-2 at home?
Yes, sir.
5-2 at home, and that speaks loudly considering the injury bug that they had early in the season. Brittney's been available for 3 home games now, I believe. 3 or 4 home games. I think it's 3 home games. So the fact that they were able to, make these things happen with Brittney and without Brittney speaks to just the advantage that the home crowd is for them and just the general level of competition that this team has.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you have 6 players on the Mercury that are in double figures, it makes this team extremely difficult to beat. And I'm sure you guys can gander who the 6 players were in Natasha Cloud, Kahleah, Sophie Cunningham, Diana Taurasi, and Brittney Griner. But I want to make sure that Sophie gets a real shout out for that double-digit effort of hers last night. I don't think I've seen a player take a fall as hard as she did last night all season yet. And she got right up and got back in the game and made some huge key plays for this team late that were huge difference maker between Sophie and Shug. The bench energy last night, while the box score might only say that combined they had 16 points, they were the difference maker in this game last night.
Yeah, the steals, the deflections, just the general chaotic energy that those 2 brought to everything that the Mercury may have either been lacking or may have just generally needed at the moments in which they were on the floor. They had a really good feel for timeliness with what they were bringing to the table. And I think with Sophie in particular, her first shift when she checked in at the end of the first quarter, they were down multiple double digits at that point. And I think she rattled off 8 points, I believe, in her first shift on the court. Couple 3-pointers, couple steals, couple deflections. Good job with sequences and switching. Good job boxing out and grabbing boards. Like, she was just checking off all the boxes on the margins in a way that this team needs from whoever it is that's going to either be that 5th player on the floor with the core 4 or is going to be one of the first 2 players in a reserve role for this team. I think that was a template for the exact style of play that I think the team needs from Sophie. I think it's also a template for how Sophie should consistently look to impact the game in a 2-way manner for this team. And I think the name that we didn't mention in that top 6 was Rebecca Allen, who was the big difference maker in that game with the way that she ultimately became a fire starter in and of herself. She knocked down, I believe, 5 3-pointers. And even past just like the box score numbers, it was the mindset for me with Rebecca Allen. She had a handful of really impactful moments and sequences that she compiled on the defensive end of the floor with the switching, causing deflections, getting a couple of steals, like just doing a lot of the little things that this team needs from her in particular with that starting group and in closing. And the other thing on the other side of the floor, mentality-wise, is her taking the open opportunities that she's able to get from others. I think that's something that Nate wants from her even more, especially with Brittney Griner back, because now that takes away one player that might be taking more 3-pointers, because obviously Brittney's going to be inside more than she is outside. So having Rebecca get up the amount of attempts that she did is exactly what they need to their shot profile. And we saw them getting up 3-pointers in a way. It wasn't their highest since Brittney's been back. I think it was their second highest, but it was still just like the feel of it just hit differently. They were certainly searching them out, and she knocked down a handful in addition to that.
It's almost hilarious when the team hits 15 threes and we're like, that's not as many as normal. You know, that's almost a hilarious line to let come out of our mouth. But that being said, yeah, Beck Allen definitely had what you could call a breakout game for the Mercury. This was the first game I felt like she really played like herself. Nate did speak to that at the end of the game and just kind of talked about how of all the new pieces on the team, specifically Beck has kind of taken the longest to find her footing and particularly her role within this team. And I think you definitely saw that come to fruition last night. And it paid off for this team. And I think you can see how willing everyone else is to let Beck have those shots.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of speaking to Beck Allen and just generally that starting group. If we could get our graphic up of the starting unit's performance with those 5 players in the rotation, just looking at the numbers, that group is just the versatility just completely. I mean, it's something that teams just have trouble kind of dealing with. The way that they go about with chemistry, going about their execution on the offensive side of the floor, they're starting to creep towards that space to where when teams start to try to load up and take away some of the pet actions that they try to get into, they're getting into their counters with a certain level of flow and a certain level of rhythm that they're not really losing whatever it is, the momentum-wise or advantage-wise that they were creating. And I think that's kind of a barometer just to see where they are chemistry-wise. And also the featuring of Brittney Griner, she's literally and figuratively a big piece. The fact that they really haven't felt like they've lost their step. Honestly, they feel like they've kind of rapidly ascended in terms of the effectiveness of the offense with those 5 players on the floor. I think it just really speaks to where this team is. And you look at the offensive rating of 104.4, that's like a top 3, top 4 if you're looking at it on a league-wide scale. That's the effectiveness that they're playing at with those 5 players on the floor. And then on the defensive side of the floor, that's also like a top 3, top 4 range in terms of their defensive rating, giving up just 91.8 points per 100 possessions. And then that net rating is top 4 as well. So all 3 of those big numbers at the top of the screen that we're looking at with the Fantastic 5 on the floor are absolutely elite. It's something that they can dictate to opponents with, and it's something that opponents are going to have a hard time game planning for and just generally stopping in real time. The efficiency on shooting from 2-point range, from 3-point range, including the free throw line as well with the true shooting percentage, is an absolutely elite clip as well. The pace at which they're playing at is higher than any other team that's spent as much time on the floor as this group has so far this season, getting up to about 103 possessions point per 48 minutes, which is that's a high level. And I think Nate spoke to that in terms of them getting up their 3-point attempts as a team. He talked about their pace being better. That number being at 103.4 possessions per 48 minutes is exactly in alignment with where he wants them to be. And then lastly, looking at the 38 points per game, that's the amount of points that they're getting from that starting group when they're on the floor with all 5 of those players together. And they're shooting 50% from the field at that clip as well. So just kind of looking at all of those numbers, the way that this team is operating, the way that things are kind of fitting together as a puzzle piece and creating this big picture thing, we're starting to see the vision of Nate Tibbetts and what he's desired from the team, style of play wise, impact on opponents wise, and things are just slowly starting to round about. Granted, it's still early, but you can already see the template and the foundation being laid for this team.
I really feel like especially when you look at other teams around the league and you compare how long they've been together to the Mercury, I feel like the Mercury really shows a lot more consistency and buy-in with each other than a lot of the other teams that have a lot of new pieces, just like the Mercury. And so I think that really speaks to this veteran leadership and how they can really buy in with one another and how that really propels the starting 5 in particular to thrive with one another.
I think that's a great point. We talk about continuity. We being just media people in general, I always love to throw out the word continuity. That's not an advantage in any capacity outside of Diana Taurasi, Sophie Cunningham, and Brittney Griner that the Phoenix Mercury had. We talked about changing ownership. We talked about changing head coach, multiple new players coming in, all of the ancillary players being basically upended and being like a brand new team in a sense, outside of those players that I mentioned. That's a tough task to kind of figure out how to integrate and, build chemistry and mesh together, especially with so much newness. The fact that they're where they're at already really speaks to where they could potentially be come the end of this very first season with them spending time together. And I think the other big thing for me with this group that's a weapon, it's an advantage for them consistently, and it's also helping to expedite their process and getting together. It's their general level of IQ. There's no situation that none of their top 6 players haven't been in. 3 of those 6 have been in it together and been to the championship round together even more, which takes on a different level of, IQ and feel. But just generally speaking, those top 6 players, when you get put in a situation where you get a play called after a timeout or you get a play called in crunch time, a team takes away your first look, a team takes away your second look. The IQ and the feel for the game to be able to play and switch from playing off of X's and O's, what was drawn on the clipboard, to then playing and read and react and using the IQ of each player as an advantage in each action that's taking place on the floor, offensively or defensively for that matter, because the defensive side is popping as well. That's where you want to be. And I think that's something in addition to obviously the talents that each player brings. It's something that Nate was looking at when compiling the roster and seeing that was something that they can certainly use as an advantage early on, but even more so later once the chemistry kind of matches with the IQ level.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. But in that second half, we definitely saw them turn it up, I think, an extra notch from that first half and versus the Liberty. I think they came out with a certain level of urgency that the third quarter was rough. So before I put my big foot in my mouth, third quarter was probably one of the roughest starts. But I think to be able to be adjusted out of a timeout and make the adjustments that Nate made and for them to be successful after that was a huge plus for this team. And I think we saw them kind of frail, I guess, for lack of a better term, against the Aces and lose a close game. And I think that they really learned from that and brought that exact kind of mindset into this game so that they didn't allow another close one to get away from them.
Yeah, to your point, for context, went into the fourth quarter down 69-76, and within about 45 seconds to a full minute, that deficit that they saw going into the fourth quarter completely evaporated. The X factor went from a little bit quiet to absolutely loud and rowdy, like we talked about in the opening of the show. And from that point on, you could tell that they were going to win that game just because of how engaged each player was, but also how engaged they got the crowd with their chaotic style of play. Like I said, looking at that fourth quarter as a whole, past that first stretch where they got back into the game and then made things interesting, once they started to create the slightest bit of separation, and then New York naturally had some fight back in that as well, the way that they were able to shut off the water of a handful of the favorite actions and the movement stuff that the New York Liberty like to get into with Sabrina Ionescu and with Breanna Stewart, as well as Jonquel Jones. The way that they were able to just muddy up the flow and really make it tough sledding for them in the half court in that fourth quarter really speaks to where this team can be in terms of being a timely stop team. I don't think they'll be like a top 2 type of defense with Connecticut or even with New York with the way that their chemistry has been hitting the last couple of weeks. But I do think they can be a top 5 defense at the end of the regular season. And in particular, in fourth quarters, I think is where they can really start to get on teams with their versatility and with their game plan execution more than anything else. We talked about the IQ before. I think that's another thing that's going to matter for this team. The New York Liberty has been the best fourth quarter team in the WNBA prior to yesterday's game. They were averaging like 21 and some change every fourth quarter. And in addition to that, they were also the best clutch team in the W in terms of games or teams that have played more than a handful of games in the clutch and come out of those victorious. I believe they came into last night undefeated, 5-0 in clutch scenarios this season, all pretty much compiled on this winning streak that they saw, which got ended yesterday. For the Phoenix Mercury to take them into fourth quarters, hold them to 17 points, 3 points less than or 4 points less than their average on a fourth quarter basis, and then also win in the crunch time in the clutch when the game becomes a game in and of itself the last 5 minutes. And this speaks to where this team is, and I feel like that win was really a sign and a message being sent from the Mercury to the league to let them know that we are healthy. First of all, we haven't been healthy pretty much all season until the last 12 days. We're healthy and we're here, and you got to see us. And I think that's the message that was sent yesterday, and I think it was felt, and I think it could be seen even more so by the numbers and actually watching the game.
Yeah, absolutely. MCG Blue in the chat says, in supplement to Steven's great points, KFC has been amazing and allowed DT to not have to be the savior every game. And this is a great point. And it is definitely going to allow for D to be kind of safe for those, late in game stretches or late in the season stretches or hopefully playoff stretches. And I think that is exactly what Nate's plan has been all along, bring in pieces to help support his core and win now. And I think we're seeing it in real time. Like you said, they wanted to send a message to the league. Before we get into it too much, I think that we should look for the same type of message in this game against Minnesota on Saturday. I think that it's a real test to send them on the road and ask them to do a similar thing on Saturday against the Minnesota Lynx. And so I think that this upcoming weekend is going to be a really, really good test for the Mercury.
Yeah. And to MC's point, that's something I wrote about on our PHNX site in the most recent notebook, just kind of speaking to Kahleah Copper's clutch play like we did on the Monday episode, but taking it even to a little bit further detail and just kind of looking at some of the moments that happened at the end of that game against the Seattle Storm on Sunday and how Kahleah Copper, like MC said, is allowing Diana Taurasi to not necessarily take her foot off the gas, but to be able to conserve energy over the course of 48 minutes and also operate without the ball in her hands and not be the main piece that's creating in crunch time. That's not something that's new to Diana, but it's not something that she's been able to do on this consistency and on this level of volume in recent memory in her career, just because of her not having like a prolific level of talent, the likes of Kahleah Copper, who's won a Finals MVP and have been a multi-time All-Star, as well as EuroLeague MVP and championships, both in EuroLeague and in the W. Like, that's just a different type of beast and dog to have next to you. And the fact that Nate trusts her enough, Kahleah trusts herself enough, and has the confidence to consistently deliver in time on task, as well as Diana passing that torch in a sense. We talked about that game winner against Minnesota from 2 weeks ago on the Monday episode, and Diana essentially saying, no, let her do it. That's a passing of the torch in a sense. That's something that the coach can't do. That's got to come from player to player, and we're seeing them operate the way that they are because of that. You look at the three players that they're using in a lot of the actions, it's Kahleah, Diana, and Brittney Griner. You can't be right with what you're doing as a defense. Are you going to load up to try to stop Kahleah Copper? First of all, good luck with that, because she has arguably the quickest first step in the W. And if you do that, either Brittney Griner is going to be wide open on the roll, or Diana Taurasi is going to be wide open for a catch and shoot opportunity or to attack a closeout. You just literally cannot be right in those scenarios. And if you help from anywhere else, it might be Rebecca Allen shooting a wide open three, it might be Sophie Cunningham shooting a wide open three, it might be Natasha Clouse shooting a wide open three. So that's just the situations they put you in. You just can't be right going up against this team in a clutch. And I think everything aligns the way that it is because Diana's bought into the roster that's insulated her.
And Chantel in the chat also asked, what exactly is it about Nate that is causing this team to buy in like they are? I think that my answer to this question is that when you have a coach that buys into you as much as Nate buys into them, there is no reason for them not to buy into Nate. I know that there's been a lot of girl dad jokes, and quite frankly, I'm on board with us calling him girl dad because I think it's adorable and hilarious. He's a girl's coach now, and so frankly, girl dad him up. That being said, though, girl dad he knows how to coach women. I know it was a big question mark when he came into this league, but I think we all needed to do a little self-reflection and look in the mirror a little bit and do some digging on Nate's background, because his dad was a lifelong women's coach. He's been around the women's game his entire life. He's been waiting this opportunity. I don't think you'll find a man more proud to coach women than Nate. And I think that really speaks highly of his character and his belief in his team and this league in itself.
It does. It does. And I think you said it perfectly when you said when a coach buys into his players the way that he desires for the players, or the way that they desire for their players to buy into their system and everything that they're teaching and coaching, that's where the marriage in terms of a relationship that's conducive to winning starts to spread seeds and lay a foundation. And Nate has dubbed it sweat equity, and being able to go out and do on the court the things and show his players, like literally putting in that same sweat equity as them at practice. Being able, if he says, for example, if he wants to have Rebecca Allen from the weak side of a defense go and help on Brittney Griner's matchup, who might be rolling to the basket, and then bump back out to her original matchup in the opposite side of the court on the corner, rather than just telling her like, okay, I want you to do this and do that and do this, he'll go and lead by example. He'll say, hey, Rebecca, I'm you. I want you to go here, do this, and literally go and do it. And she can watch it step by step. And having a coach, obviously, it's not a coach's job to be athletically inclined in any capacity. That's not the title of the job. However, it becomes an advantage when your players can literally watch you go out and do the things that you're desiring for them to do. And again, when you're able to just get on the court and really, like you say, boots on the floor, get on the court and do things with your players literally, and again, build that sweat equity, it just hits different. And I think there's a type of leadership that comes with that. So where now when he asks you to do something, you're able to trust his IQ for one, but then you're also able to revert back to, okay, we did all of this stuff at practice 3 days ago. Now it's a game scenario. I watched him do it, and I saw myself do it right after that. Everything makes sense. Let's go and do it. And now they're running through a brick wall for the coach. Not just for the coach, but for the team, for their players, everything just hits differently at that point.
I think the winning energy on this team is contagious. You could feel it ringing through the arena last night. You could feel it ringing through the streets when I was walking to my car. I mean, the winning energy that comes from the Phoenix Mercury right now, it's going to be hard to beat them at home, especially for the remainder of this season if they can stay healthy, which actually brings me to our next point. And I do want to just speak on this very briefly. Cameron Brink, if you haven't heard, tore her ACL yesterday in the Sparks game versus the Connecticut Sun. And so I've been watching Cam for about 5 years, and she's part of the reason that I love basketball. And to watch her go down like that, it sucks. She's having a hell of a rookie season. And I just want to give out good energy for her healing and her to come back next year healthier, better, back and better.
Yeah, I that was a tough notification to see earlier today. I saw the injury happen last night right before the Mercury game, and I was hoping that it was just like a knee sprain or whatever that would allow for her to come back at some time this season. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that. Granted, things could certainly be worse. I still think that she's going to be able to bounce back from this injury. I think she's already laid a solid foundation and shown the type of player that's going to have elements of her game from the collegiate level that were elite transfer to the WNBA level on the professional side of things. And, naturally, you want to see her get back healthy. I think she'll do that, and I think she'll be able to just kind of get back right to the point where she was and just continue to build on what's likely to end up being a Hall of Fame career when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. And I don't mean to laugh at the comments, but it is hilarious how half of the internet is just volunteering their ACLs for Cam. Kobe, I think she would take it at this point. I'm not going to lie. I don't think our ACLs are as strong as Cam's, but I think she'd take it,
Yeah, sure.
All that being said, though, just kind of from a big lens, looking at the league, we're about a third way through the season. And so I just want to kind of touch base with you. At the very beginning of the season, we talked about who we thought were going to be serious contenders this year. And for the most part, I think we've kind of held true, but I just kind of wanted to revisit that a little bit. Obviously, we've seen the Mercury get closer to that contender role that we're kind of looking for them to take. But right now, obviously, the Connecticut Sun is stepping out at 13-1 and has everyone pretty locked on them. They look really good, and it's hard to lie. It's hard to say they don't. Their only loss is at home, which does suck, to the New York Liberty, which just goes to show how good of a team the Mercury just beat the other day. Stephen, what are you kind of looking for from the Sun in particular? We've talked about how they've kind of had a weaker schedule than most, especially looking at this point of the season now. What are you looking for from them to kind of prove to you that their record isn't a lie?
For me, everything Connecticut Sun related is gonna be gauged on their playoff performance. This is a team that's consistently been a contender for the last 5 seasons in a row, if not more than that, depending on how far you want to go back. From Jonquel Jones winning MVPs, DeWanna Bonner just being one of the clutchest players in the league. You could look at Jasmine Thomas when she was with that team, when they had Kurt Miller on the sidelines. And obviously they made the transition to Stephanie White. And in this era with Stephanie White, it doesn't feel like they've lost any step. The roster is completely different at this point. A lot of the old players that were with them have transitioned to different teams. Two of which have gone to the Minnesota Lynx, ironically, and they've made their stamp be felt with them. But just kind of looking at this team, the Connecticut Sun, Alyssa Thomas, where else to start? Literally does everything. You need somebody to initiate offense? Cool. I'm going to guard the opposing team's best player. It doesn't matter what position? Cool. You need me to grab rebounds? Cool. You need me to rim protect? Cool. You need me to be a help defender and just shrink the floor on the opposing team's best player, switch, hedge? I can do all of that. You want me to run pick and roll? Cool. You want me to be the roller in pick and roll? I can do that. There's literally nothing that Alyssa Thomas can't do outside of shooting three-pointers. And if her labrums weren't torn, I'm pretty sure she would have figured out how to master that as well. So she's a consistent perennial MVP contender, MVP candidate over the last handful of seasons, right on that same level as A'ja Wilson and Breanna Stewart. And everything starts with her. And then you go down the line from there in pecking order. Obviously, we talked about DeWanna Bonner, somebody that the Phoenix Mercury X Factor fan, they're no stranger to in any capacity, knowing what type of player DeWanna Bonner is. So I can kind of leave that one and kind of transition to the next. Brianna Jones coming back from her Achilles injury from last season. She started to look a whole lot more like herself, kind of still inching and chopping wood and getting back to that old form that she was in as one of the most dominant, imposing front court pieces in the paint, defensively and offensively, and in screen setting, and being able to provide a little bit of floor spacing, operating in very similar ways to how Brittney Griner does for the Phoenix Mercury. And then two other players I want to mention. Ty Harris, their starting point guard. Ty Harris is doing everything that this team needs from them. And you look at the three-point shooting, look at the clutch play, and even more specifically, and just generally being a steady hand, doing things on the ball, allowing for Alyssa Thomas to initiate offense and being able to play off of everything that Alyssa Thomas is, not unlike Kahleah does for the Phoenix Mercury. I think all those little things really matter. And the way that this team is defending, if they're consistently getting the level of offense that they are right now, they're going to be a hard out. And I can see whoever coming from the Western Conference ultimately end up going up against them potentially when it's all said and done come WNBA finals time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they have, I hate to use the word finally, but they finally have all of what they need, or so seemingly, from the ice test, right? So I'm definitely looking for a step out from them. But then you kind of already mentioned them, and we've got a ton of talk about the Minnesota Lynx coming up in just a second. But just to kind of quickly hit on them, you're right about their offseason acquisitions being kind of exactly what they needed. They have a great bench. They really are doing. Cheryl has them. Why are you shaking your head at me?
Because Minnesota is ridiculous. That's why.
Oh, okay. I was like, did I say something wrong?
No, you said
everything. I'm like, Stephen,
right.
you're way smarter than me, so I want to make sure that.
Nah, you got it. Nah, have your confidence. You got it.
Oh, that was funny. Anyway, no, yeah, Minnesota is no joke. And honestly, why don't we just get into that while we're on the subject? Minnesota is 11-3. One of their 3 losses is obviously to the Phoenix Mercury in Phoenix, which was a hell of a game. If you weren't there, you missed out. That being said, though, you've got another opportunity to watch them on TV on Saturday. It's going to be pretty exciting. I think that one of the things that you guys should know about me is that I'm always going to remember the last game. And in my head, the players always remember the last game. So I always think the worst after the Mercury have beat a team. I think they're going to come out with a vengeance. And so it's safe to say, with the Lynx only having 3 losses, I think the vengeance will be a little bit extra. We're going to be in their home court, in their homeland. They will have played a game tonight, and is the game over yet? Actually, no, I don't think so. Okay. So, yeah, probably by the end of the night, they're going to be on a 5-game winning streak. So the Mercury are going to be looking to snap 2 straight winning streaks, which isn't easy to do, especially in this league when every team right now, and you hear the players say it over and over and over again, is so good.
Yep. And I'm shaking my head because the Minnesota Lynx are so good. And we talked about them being in a very similar position to the Phoenix Mercury. Granted, their newness isn't as drastic with an ownership change and a head coach change as the Phoenix Mercury was and is right now. But looking at the personnel on roster, there's been a context shift for the Minnesota Lynx as there's been for the Phoenix Mercury. And looking at the Lynx, all this newness, even the tweaks in the system for Cheryl Reeve and her just evolving her process as a coach. They're second in offensive rating, second in defensive rating, second in net rating on the season. And this team is special. This team is just special to do the things that they're already doing. And they've already had their own injury adversity with Diamond Miller being down with injury, as well as Dorka Juhas missing some time earlier in the season. And they haven't missed a beat. They just haven't missed a beat. They haven't skipped steps in their process, but their process has been so sharp in execution that they're already looking like, at moments in times this season, the best team. And if not the best team, the second best team, even with the likes of New York and Connecticut being as great as they've been out the gate to start this season. And I think that really just speaks to the leadership that they have from the sideline from Cheryl Reeve. Also speaks to the prolificity of Napheesa Kahleah and that capital D dog that she is. She might not necessarily be number one in the MVP race now as she was when we talked about it 2 weeks ago, but she's still very much in that top 5, and she's been a top 4 player for the season's entirety. You look at Courtney Williams, she's been one of the best point guards in the WNBA, running that offense and also doing things on defense and then rebounding that they need for them to be as good as they desire to be. And then I'll be remiss if I didn't.
Don't even need to sell. Stephen doesn't even need to say it. Mercury fans know all about Kahleah McBride. We've heard about it, okay? We saw it with our own too.
Hey, you can't speak to the Lynx and not mention. Okay, like, she's shooting the absolute leather off the basketball right now.
Like, if there's anyone that you can with confidence say is shooting the shit out of the ball, it's Kahleah McBride. And like, she just doesn't miss. And you can't guard her. She gets the ball out of her hands extremely quick. It's unreal. And so, yeah, I'll definitely be looking for the Mercury to shut down Kahleah just a little bit, maybe. She's made 49 3-pointers on the season. Just to give you guys a little context to compare, the second most is Diana Taurasi with 43.
I'm glad you brought that point up because just like Diana Taurasi, Kahleah McBride, my niece's name is Michaela, so naturally when I hear the Kahleah part, I'm thinking me in front of it. Nonetheless, Kahleah McBride, the way she's getting her shots off, the way that the Minnesota Lynx roster is set up, you might think on paper, okay, she's just shooting a whole lot of catch and shoot opportunities based off the attention that Diamond Miller might have been generating early on, and definitely based off of what Napheesa Kahleah does on offense, initiating offense with Kahleah screening, or out of the pick and roll, or just out of the post, or off of the attention that Courtney Williams garners in pick and roll, and just generally how she's able to manipulate defenses. No, she's playing off of the advantages that those players create for her, but she's also very much been a fire starter in and of herself as well. Initiating pick and roll, just shooting in isolation, being able to just pull up on against anybody with, like you said, one of the quickest releases from pickup point to release point in the W, and the efficiency on volume. It's ridiculous. In addition to doing things off of movement, coming off of screens, off the ball, playing off of the advantages, like I said, other players are creating for her, but also doing it with movement. She operates in ways that Diana Taurasi does for the Phoenix Mercury, but she can also toggle and operate in ways that Rebecca Allen and Sophie Cunningham do on the periphery in the ancillary role with everything that she does on offense. And on top of that, she's also guarding a lot of times one of the best, if not the best, perimeter player on the opposing team on the defensive side. So it's not like she's just, just kind of out the way on defense guarding one of the worst players on the floor. No, she's taking on the challenges on both sides of the ball. It's ridiculous the level of play she's at to start the season. And if she doesn't fizzle down or plateau in any capacity, they're going to be in everybody's way when the season's done. And I think that's something I mentioned. I mentioned it in the preseason that this team was going to be something that everybody had to deal with. We're already seeing that now, and this is just the foundation being laid for them.
Y'all, I think we can actually wrap this up. Stephen told me I had a great point. I don't think that's ever happened before.
Lies.
I'm feeling #blessed and smart. I'm loving life. I'm just, wow. I feel so honored and blessed. I don't think I could ask for anything better than this, to cap off my Wednesday,
It's not the first time. I'm going to tell you to go do your homework and go ahead and count on multiple hands how many times I've said it. But no, it was a great point. And just the Minnesota's fun. I would suggest for any Mercury fan, with there being so many days between Tuesday's game and Saturday's game, take some time and scratch your Mercury itch and go back and watch that game against the Minnesota Lynx from 2 Fridays ago. It was Brittney Griner's very first game, as well as Rebecca Allen's return from her concussion protocol. And it was a game where Kahleah Copper hit the game winner. There's a lot of fun stuff you can glean from that matchup that you can be able to apply in that matchup coming on Saturday. And I think it would be a fun use of your time ahead of Saturday's game.
Stephen, I have some people harassing me about the comments that they're leaving for you. Mr. Iron Mike Luke is Michael Aaron Luke, I guess is what his name is on this chat, but he's leaving you some nippy hustle quotes.
Oh my God.
Mike, you see how much you just made his eye roll?
You gotta stop it. You gotta stop
it. He said it. Hold on.
I'm holding you accountable. I'm holding you accountable based off the conversation we had.
He's typing these lyrics, and I just had to bring your attention to them because I know he's in here just trying to make you laugh as hard as I do, you know?
Last time that I checked, there's 2 Chainz on Stephen. That's a bar. That's a bar. I salute you for that one. That one was a bar.
Mike only drops bars.
Shout out, Michael. We appreciate you, Michael. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, we got the whole Wildcat fam in the chat today. We got Mike, Jason, Sheer, Kobe, and then a whole bunch of ASU fans in here, you know? Anyways, back to the links, though. Yes, I'm pretty excited about this matchup on Saturday, and I think we're just set to see another high-level basketball game. Don't you think?
Oh, I know for a fact because the level that these 2 teams are playing at, honestly, it's going to probably look and feel a whole lot like 2 of the last 3 games did. The game against the Aces that came down to the wire, it had some moments where either team could sway it. And then even more so this game from Tuesday night, last night, against the New York Liberty. I think it's going to resemble both of those games in terms of the level of competition from start to finish. The back and forth is going to take place. And just really getting to learn more about these teams as they continue on their journey through this 40-game regular season.
Absolutely. I saw a video today of Asia's post game at the end of the finals where she says, "We've really played 49 games." And how fast it really does fly by, huh? Like, we're really almost done. We're wrapping it up, and we're pretty much there. Like, we're halfway through the season.
We're getting there. We're getting close to the halfway mark already. So I suggest for anybody that's still contemplating whether how much they want to invest in women's basketball and how much they want to tap in with the W, the clock is ticking. Now, granted, you get a little bit more time than you normally would because of the Olympic break that's coming. But tap in now because there's a lot of things happening. If you're just generally a basketball fan, I promise you there is probably 2 or 3 teams that can scratch your basketball itch. Whether you like teams that get up and down the floor, you like teams that play inside out, you like teams that shoot a lot of threes, you like teams that play defense first, second, and third in terms of everything that they look to do. There's something for every basketball fan out there, and the W is as competitive as any professional league across the world. So tap in.
If you can't tell, Stephen and I are already having just such a blast this season. And that being said, I have failed to mention something on today's episode that I'm just honestly pretty mad about myself for not having brought up by now. And that is that we have actually another takeover coming up here in August. And I know a few of you actually missed yesterday's game against the New York Liberty. But that's why this is great news, because on August 26th, you have an opportunity to go not only with me, but also Stephen. And so I just think, why would you not step out, come to the game, get some pregame drinks and meals with us over at the Desmond, waltz on over to the Footprint Center, see all the sick Mercury signage around town, you know, take some pictures outside. I'm not going to lie, squad, if we don't get a picture outside the Footprint Center next time we're at the takeover, Erika is going to have a stroke. So we better get a picture outside, okay? Anyways, though, that being said, though, you better bring your rear end. And Landon, yeah, you can come. Bring your rear end from Louisiana. It doesn't matter. Shelby, come on down from Georgia. I think this is a great excuse to fly out to Phoenix personally, though I'm very biased. So all that being said, I'm pretty excited. We got a super snap from Mr. Mark. Stephen, this one's for you. I already know. Mr. Brett doesn't leave super snaps for me.
Mark, we appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jacob Franklin. It's a super chat. That's why I'm confused, though. You know, the Wildcat show, they taught me everything I know, you know, so I became familiar with the super snap term. But now I know now it is super chat. Anyways, though, Stephen, what else do we have to say about the links?
I think we said enough about the Minnesota Lynx before we turn into MIN instead of PHNX.
I just want to make sure I didn't leave anything out. You know what I mean?
Nah, I think we hit on everything. There's other teams that we can certainly speak to because that top 6 is something. And the fact that that top six is including the Las Vegas Aces, the reigning back-to-back champions, are in 6th place in that group. I think that says a lot to just the parity that's going on in the league right now.
Stephen, actually, you're wrong. They're in 7th.
Are they in 7th now? So that must mean that Atlanta won today.
Oh! You're right. They're tied for 6. I can't
6.
read.
Yeah, you good. No, you good.
Read.
So yeah, just speaking to that, like the fact that this team or that team is in 6th place right now, with they admittedly haven't been playing their best basketball and also haven't been healthy. With Chelsea Gray likely to return tonight as they take on, I think, Seattle. Once we wrap up with the podcast, but for all of these teams, especially with all of the newness that a handful of these teams have, to be going up against that they have already established and be kind of like a step or two ahead of them at this moment in time, it just speaks to the parity that we're going to ultimately end up seeing once it comes to seeding and implications in terms of the standings at the end of the regular season, and even more so once we get into specific matchups come playoff time. And some of the other teams that I'd just like to quickly note, we talked about Minnesota already. We already talked about Connecticut. We talked a lot about New York. These teams that, like, obviously Phoenix, we're gonna say more about the Mercury, but these teams are they're just too good. They're just too good. There's just so much talent. And I think the big thing for me, just in kind of assessing this kind of top 6 as a whole, it's the way that talent has kind of converged into certain factions of the W, kind of relocating to specific markets. So you get Skylar Diggins going up to Seattle to play with Jewel. Obviously, you get the Connecticut Sun just kind of not necessarily adding any brand new talents, but kind of adding on the margins and just being able to kind of make a team that fits a little bit better to everything that Stephanie White wants to do. I think all of those little things just helps to kind of make the maybe talent, the talent pool and the advantage that the Las Vegas Aces had is kind of dwindling a little bit more. And that's where the parity is coming in. And I think we're going to start to really see it play out a little bit more once we start getting closer to the playoffs, and especially in the playoffs.
Stephen, before we go, I do have to ask you a question courtesy of the chat.
No, I don't.
So you don't? There won't be a rap battle.
I rap along, but I don't rap.
Yeah, we all rap in private, right? Like in our cars with the music turned all the way up, right? Like,
yes. Sometimes I do an acapella too, but I don't rap. I don't rap as in writing my own lyrics and freestyling. That's not me.
My mom said she would come if you guys were gonna have a rap battle, so I think I might
goodness.
I'm gonna spend the next month or so doing some convincing you guys. Don't you worry. It's rare that people say no to me, you know what I mean? And I need Mike to meet Stephen. I need Stephen to meet Mike, and I don't know what I have to do to get that to happen, but I'm making it happen.
It sounds like you need to get your pen and paper and write your own rap suit, and if that's what you're doing.
Oh, it's going to start with Sophie's pursuit of the basketball pays off over and over again. That's going to be my first line.
Okay. I don't know how you're going to make a rhyme scheme to follow up with that, but good luck over here with that one. I'm
losing the rap battle. Don't worry, you guys. Oh, and actually one more thing, actually, before for real, before we go, I think this is going to be the last time I can get to say it. Chicken and pickle trivia night. If you want to beat me at something, this is your opportunity. Bring your rear end to the chicken and pickle so you can beat me at trivia. I think it's a really fun opportunity. I suck at answering questions from even Stephen. I even know what he's going to ask me. So just imagine if I don't know what question's about to come at me. What kind of answer I'm going to come up with. So I just think there's no reason for you to not be there at the Chicken and Pickle tomorrow from 7 to 9. It's free. Jacob just said, "You're going, Erika?" If I say maybe, is that like will that suffice, Jacob? So what's stopping Mike? I'm not driving Mike. I don't need his farts in my car. Sorry to say.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways, though, Stephen, let the people know where to find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at StayTrueS.3. You can also find me on YouTube at Stephen Prejean Gardner 3. Just posting a lot of the conversations with players and coaches from the Mercury as well as the Chicago Sky and even the Phoenix Suns. For anybody that taps in with the Suns, that also taps in with us, we appreciate y'all. Yeah, got tons of film sessions on the way. A lot to talk about with this team and the space that they're operating in. Didn't get to some of the clips I had today on this podcast episode for us, but we'll have those included with some of the film sessions to come. So definitely look for more written work. Had a post earlier this week prior to the game against the Liberty, speaking to Kahleah, Brittney Griner, and then the general team shot profile. Definitely check in with that on the Go PHNX site. And then other than that, just be ready for things on Twitter. I will leave a disclaimer. I won't be live tweeting during the game on Saturday. My mom's birthday is actually today, and we're throwing her a surprise birthday party on Saturday. It's going to be at 2 o'clock my time, which the game is at 3 o'clock my time, so I won't tap in with that, but I'll be posting about it maybe on Monday after that before the podcast, or Sunday, actually. So, yeah. Stay tuned for everything. We got a lot of things coming in the hopper as this team starts to get healthy and really starts to stake their claim in terms of everything going on with the league.
Absolutely. And actually, one more thing before I go for real is that I just want to give you guys a huge thank you. I had so many people come up to me. I had more people come up to me yesterday and be like, I love your show than ever. And it was, first of all, so freaking cool. But second of all, just thank you guys for stopping me in the hallway, wherever you saw me, to say that. It's freaking awesome. And like, I love meeting you guys. So if you see me walking or running around the Footprint Center for that matter, stop and say hi. I'm always, even if I am running, I've got time. That being said, though, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Erika Lead Day, just as shown as below. And you guys have been doing a great job of showing out on the PHNX Mercury Twitter account. We're almost to 1,000 followers, and it would make my day if we got there like ASAP, no Rocky. So take your rear end to the PHNX Mercury podcast, and I will see you on the Twitters.
We all silly like the mayor.